Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Canadian jazz saxophonist Cory. We caught up with him in Canada on May 6th, 2020 to talk about another stellar CD called Day by Day, released in the midst of a global pandemic. He also talked about the surreal new COVID-19 world and a hope for the future. Dig.
I'm doing all right. How you holding up? Where exactly are you at?
Vancouver, West Coast, Northwest Coast.
Any good news from Canada?
You can't group Canada as a whole in terms of how bad it is. It's certainly worse in Ontario and Quebec. BC is right above Washington State, and so we were very close to a very serious epicenter, but our government at every level has handled things brilliantly. And so, things are pretty chill here. We're in lockdown, and today they're actually making some announcements around some loosening of restrictions. But as far as my industry is concerned, we're going to be shut down for a long time, so I'm not anticipating any good news on that front. But, elective surgeries will return. Some other healthcare professions like chiropractic and physio will probably return. So, it's starting to loosen, but again, I don't think my industry will be returning anytime soon. So, in that way, it's bad news, but I think in general, it's good up here. We handled it. We handled it really well. I think we handled it as best as we possibly could.
I think the thing that gets me the most is when, leaders of countries have gotten this. I know Kevin Trudeau got it. I know that Boris Johnson got it, and Boris was really in bad shape. It's there's something that hits home about all this when your leader actually gets it. And it's the whole thing, it's almost like, when 9/11 happened, everybody wanted to put a face on the assailant. And with this, it's like we get to the point where it's like the whole world's dealing with this, and we want to say it's China now. We always have to find something, but it's like the whole planet's dealing with it. It's a virus. It's like we just have to have a good response to it, just like you said. Your government needs to be responsive enough to protect its people and to help get through it,
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I can't imagine, and I'm not a political guy at all. I can't imagine, even if you are a Republican, how you can look at the leadership down there and be proud about the way it's been handled. It's very sad. And, I don't particularly agree with all of Justin Trudeau's politics, but man, every day he has stood up and addressed the nation and reassured us that somehow in some way we're going to be cool. My wife is a teacher, a full-time school teacher, so she's cool, but I applied for all of the funding that was made available. Each application took literally 30 seconds, and the money was in my account in 3 days. And, I don't know how anybody can criticize that. Now, the other side of that is, in a year, how much are we going to be paying for a carton of eggs? And how much is my income tax going to be? And how much is a liter of gas going to be? Because we're going to pay for it. We're getting the money now when we need it, but make no mistake, we're going to pay for it. But as far as the leadership goes here, they've stood up and they've been honest and they've been transparent and they've been informative and they've been sensitive and compassionate. And I don't really know what else you can really ask for, Yet there are still people that complain about how it's all being handled. So it's, and the blaming China and, all this kind of stuff, the racism and stuff that comes out of that. We have a massive Asian population in BC specifically, and even more specifically in Vancouver. So it's crazy times for sure.
It is. It really is. And I think that, it's one of those very few moments, unique moments in the history of humanity where we're all on one planet together doing one thing together, so.
Yep. There's, for me, I mean, I've been telling people, because people check in on me a lot because, I do a lot of stuff in the city, in the country, and, well, in the continent in terms of jazz music. And, I'm lucky. By no means am I immune to the financial destruction that this is going to cause, me and my family. However, I'm much better off than a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for that. And there have been some positive things that have come out of it. I've enjoyed spending, I have young kids, 10 and 8, and, this is unprecedented time with them. And yes, at times it does get frustrating. But, it's unprecedented time to spend with family and try to focus on family. And to be honest with you, I don't know how much you know about me and what I do, but my life is a gong show. I mean, I'm doing like a million things, and I'm going, 120 miles per hour every day. And it's been really, really nice to slow down and just go, oh, I don't have anything to worry about. I don't have any music to prepare. I don't have any tours to book. I don't have any flights to book. And, oh, hey, there's my saxophone. I actually really feel like just playing my saxophone and enjoying it instead of this pressure to practice and play and prepare, and everything has a reason and a purpose, So for me, that part of it has been, really great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I go through days of feeling really down and kind of like I'm crashing into walls and praying that this is going to end. But, when it does end, I'm really going to try to focus on, maybe trying to lead a little bit better life, a little happier life, a little less chaotic life instead of constantly chasing the dollar all the time,
I think that's the part of this that's the revelation for a lot of people. Is the universe is saying, Mother Nature is saying, you're not in control. You better figure this out because, it can come to a halt really, really fast. And I don't think any of us have ever experienced it like that because we've been so insulated with this notion of all of these forces of our modern society that make us think, well, that's a movie. That's not going to happen to us, But we're living in a different way. But I will tell you what I'm always so happy about, and I mean this as genuinely as I can say. Every time I get a Cory Weeds disc in the mail, it's a great day.
Thank you. I've been joking with people, and I actually mean it seriously, but it makes me laugh to say it. I mean, I've always said I've been trying to put my label out of business for 20 years, and it just won't go away. And, for all this time I've been saying, the label is going to end up sinking me. And right now, the record label is saving me, not only from there's two aspects. There's the mental aspect because it's giving me something to do. And we're living in a weird time where people can't consume live music. The A part of it is the mental side of the label, in that I have stuff to do and that we're in an interesting time because there's this need and this desire for people to consume music because they're at home doing nothing. So that works as a benefit for the label. But B, the financial side, and don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm rolling in $100 bills over here, but for the life of the label, I've never used money from the label to do anything other than continue to put out music. So it's been this own little machine that just kind of regurgitates money, and we put out more music. And when you have 180 titles, you generate a significant amount of revenue. And I say that relatively speaking, we're a small jazz label. But, there's a little bit of money there now that I can draw on and that I can count on every month that comes in that, as of yet, hasn't been affected by any of this. And I would venture to guess that it may even be enhanced by this situation. So here I am all these years later saying, wow, the label's kind of saving me, not sinking me. So it's provided me with some chuckles, that's for sure.
Man, my dad used to always tell me, be careful what you wish for,
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, man, I did an interview the other day, and somebody said, did you ever think that you would have a label with 180 titles? I said, to be honest with you, I didn't think we'd reach 5 titles because that was never the intent. The intent for the label, the intent was not to have a record label. The intent was to put out 5 records, lose a whole bunch of money, and just, you know, have a nice documentation of some local music, and you know, and that'd be the end of it. But it, you know, it grew and it grew and it grew, and I think now we're sort of at a point where, you know, the name Cellar Live or the name Cellar Music, you know, is synonymous with good quality and good music, and so we've kind of made it to the top of that pile, and people like yourself and radio all over the U.S. have really embraced the label as a whole, and so, you know, somehow we've found a way to. I'm pretty creative too in the way I put out records and the way I fund records. So, you know, I'm pretty industrious and resourceful when it comes to that too. So, you know, those things have served us well over the years, and here we are, you know, 180 titles later, and you know, they're coming out a mile a minute. You know, your mailbox will be full with all our new releases over the next 6 months.
Which is so satisfying to me to see that albums are still coming in. It's like, I think the thing that's been the most traumatic about this is that all of the things, the creature comforts, and all of just the actions that we all did in life, it's just good that they're not all going away, that there's this, you know, beacon every time I go to the mailbox that I'm going to get a CD. But like I said, when I got your CD, I love your music, and when I put it in, it was just so refreshing. And it's exactly, there's so many titles that have come out that are very apropos, and yours is Day by Day, and the way it's on there is just like quarantine, day by day by day by day by day by day.
It's you know, it's really, really funny because obviously, I mean, you probably figure out that, you know, in order to get these records out, I mean, I had planned this release for May back in October with no concept that the world was going to basically end for 2 months. So it's really funny, the name of the record. It's really funny how the graphics of the record, like you mentioned, really reflect what's going on right now. It kind of scares me actually to think about it. You know, and the concept, you know, the concept of the record too, I think if you listen to the music even is sort of a reflection of the, you know, the various emotions that kind of go along with what people are feeling and sort of dealing with. So, you know, I'm really proud. I'm really, really proud of that record. I really love David Hazeltine. He's a very dear friend. And although we've worked together before and actually made a record together, this one was a little different. He's such a wonderful arranger, and I'm not trying to underplay his talent, but his arranging technique is so subtle, and he takes these tunes and does things with them that are very subtle. It's kind of like the complexity is in the simplicity, and you know, it's really, really fun. It was really fun to work with him on this, and he's an extremely talented guy. And as I mentioned, he's probably one of my closest, if not the closest, New York friend. We've had a lot of fun together. We've traveled a lot together and toured, and so, you know, it's a special one for me. It's a really special one for me.
You know, we're going to get to the end of this. We're going to get to a point where we're back in the crowd and you're back on stage. And my question to you is this: what do you hope that we realize? What revelations do you hope that we get about life when we come back?
Well, first of all, it's a great question. It's a grand question. I think it has several answers. I mean, first of all, you know, I hope that we realize, and I think that we all do realize this, but sometimes we lose sight of this fact. But, you know, I know that we as musicians work just as hard as doctors and just as hard as lawyers and just as hard as engineers, you know, to practice our craft. And some of us, including me, sometimes get a little frustrated when people come up and say, oh, you're so lucky to do what you love to do and to do what you're passionate about, you know, to which I always say, well, thank you. I understand what you're trying to say, but like, why do you do what you do? You know, like I'm lucky. My dad was a amateur musician, and he introduced me to music. But regardless of that, we are so lucky, and I feel so blessed that a big part of my job is to get up and make music with people and entertain people and be social with people and connect with people in a way that most people can't even begin to understand. And that's what they're saying when they say you're lucky to do what you want to do. We don't make a lot of money, but I won't ever take for granted again that when I hit the bandstand, there's somebody out there in the crowd, whether there's a crowd of 4 people or whether there's a crowd of 100 people, there's somebody out there that is listening to my music or that's depending on me and my music to take them away from whatever it is that's bothering them or whatever it is that's going on in their life. And my music holds a really important place at that moment in their life. And that's a very big responsibility. That's just as big a responsibility as, you know, a doctor or a lawyer defending somebody or a doctor helping somebody. And so, you know, I think for me, the realization is just how lucky I've been to be around this great music and to have the friends that I do and to be able to get up on stage and communicate with people in this specific way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it was relatively coherent. But that, for me, that's the big one.
No, it makes sense. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it makes sense. What's that?
Yeah, and just it's pretty cool. You know, it's pretty cool what we get to do, and then from a, you know, also like from a record label standpoint, and you know, just to be able to present this music. All I ever wanted in my life was to be around this music. I didn't care what way. I didn't care what way I was going to be around the music. I needed to be around the music in a really serious way, and I've been lucky. I get to be around it in many different facets, and I'm certainly going to take that less for granted. You know, when this is all over, than I did, you know, beforehand. So,
and that made total sense. And I think the one thing that is very key about all this is the art forms. They're doing things, something that they've already done. And the thing about jazz is that it happens once, and there's a deliberation to it happening once. So you all are almost in a position where you guys are living what jazz is right now. This is a one-time thing. This is all about, you know, coming together for an art form that you guys do one time. So, and this is an art form that doesn't make a lot of money. You guys are in this for the love of it, and there's a lot of innovation that goes into jazz. So, those are some big thoughts there. But have you thought about those ideas about jazz and what's going on with what's happening now?
I guess so. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I'm not a big first of all, I'm not a big philosophical thinker in any aspect of life. I'm not a philosopher or philosophical thinker, and that certainly transfers over into music. So, you know, or into how I feel about jazz. So, you know, I'd be lying if I said I've spent a lot of time thinking about that aspect, but I have thought a lot about what people are doing. I have watched what people are creating. I have watched what's been going on, and I'm really curious to see how that manifests when it's all over. You know, for example, you know, like just using this person's example I have a great deal of respect for, trumpeter Jeremy Pelt, who's a friend of mine. And every time I see him on social media, he's got a picture with him and his trumpet, and you see a computer in front of him, and he's obviously in a music editing or writing or recording program. I'm really curious to see and hear the music that comes out of this when it's all over. You know, is it going to be, and I'm sure it's going to be everything, but is it going to be angry? Is there going to be some angry music? Is it going to be melancholy and sad and pretty music? Like, how are the reflections of what's gone on for the last 2 or 3 months, or however long this lasts? How is that going to manifest itself into its music? I don't think about it on my end because I'm not I'm not a prolific composer by any stretch. So, I'm not using this time, to write music. But people that are composers and arrangers, I'm really curious to see, how that affects the sound of the music, and if it's if it's something that you can notice, if it's a tangible difference, or are we this is just going to end, the gigs are slowly going to come back, and we're just going to start playing again, and it's just going to be like it was, as if nothing happened. That's what I'm most curious about.
Well, Cory, thank you for taking some time out to talk about the new album and about this new world we live in. I really appreciate it, man.
Anytime. I appreciate the support, and stay safe. And anytime you ever need anything, just let me know.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Canada, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Cory for his time, music, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, support the arts and enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.